They were abandoned to rot. But thanks to these heroic fans, many of the beloved animatronic characters from classic animatronic bands were saved and brought back from the ashes. Today, we'll tell you the stories of some of the most famous abandoned and rescued animatronics. If you consider yourself an animatronic fan, go and follow these 3 channels right now. Links in the descriptions and in the comments. The King, Jared Sanchez. The history of Chuck E. Cheese pizza is long, interesting, and complicated, and we've talked about it before in previous videos. But the short of it is that it was created by Nolan Bushnell, co-founder of Atari. Nolan wanted to create a place where families could enjoy the games of an arcade while eating pizza and enjoying a live show. And so, Chuck E. Cheese was born. The live show for this new concept was obviously the famous animatronic band, but when it debuted in 1977, it was nicknamed the Portrait Show because the characters were behind 4-foot-tall picture frames. By 1979, many restaurants had also added cabaret shows in separate rooms of each restaurant. Some of these shows were modeled after musical artists like the Beagles, the Beach Bowsers, and the King. The King was a 9-foot-tall animatronic lion dressed in a style resembling Elvis Presley and was programmed to sing Elvis Presley songs, most of which were the original recordings. Everything was doing great, but in the early 1980s, Chuck E. Cheese started having problems. In an effort to get with the times, some changes were made, and one of these changes included the King. The King was rebranded and turned into King Cat. The Elvis theme was left behind and turned into a Michael Jackson-inspired character. His clothes were changed and a new wig was added. Sadly, these changes were not enough to save the chain, and in 1983, Chuck E. Cheese declared bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy!
Showbiz bought all the assets of Pizza Time Theater Inc. and bought both companies together, naming the new company Showbiz Pizza Time Theater Inc., but left the 2 restaurants as separate entities. After this happened, the cabaret show started slowly being retired, which ended up in The King being abandoned. The King's animatronics were destroyed, auctioned, and used for parts, and some of them were stored. And you would think that this was the end for this royal character.
Childhood character back to life.
I don't even know what category to put this guy in.
The King is back.
Here's where Jared Sanchez comes in. It all began in 1992, when Jared went to Chuck E. Cheese on his 12th birthday. It was at that moment when he became amazed at the King animatronic. That same year, Jared went back to Chuck E. Cheese and learned the unfortunate news that the King had been retired. This tormented him for a long time, until 10 years later, he found a user on eBay selling a King animatronic for $25,000. This is a pretty hefty sum. But it did not stop Jared from talking with the owner and trying to convince him to sell the King to him. It took him 10 years, but Jared convinced the owner to sell him the animatronic for $10,000 and in payment installments. And that's how Jared became the owner of his first King animatronic. Jared spent months replacing its cylinders and learning to sew so he could fit him with new fur. He figured out how to make the King work with a modern computer instead of its old reel-to-reel machine, and learned to program each of its movements painstakingly. In 2016, Jared transformed his master bedroom into a studio, took singing lessons so he could voice the character, and brought the King back. After this, Jared rescued a second King animatronic that he found at Captain Dave's roller rink in Michigan. He called this new character King Puff, and took him on a road trip from Michigan to Tampa in the passenger seat. Then he managed to get his hands on not 1, but 2 other King animatronics. These last 2 animatronics were stored in a warehouse, and Jared was able to strike a deal with the owner. He helped them clean out the warehouse, and they gave him the animatronics for free. He named one of these animatronics King John, in honor of their former owner, and customized him to be playing a keyboard. The other one was called 4. This King animatronic doesn't have any cosmetics, and he is hilarious. Jared and his animatronics are creating a new concept called Roboloquist. Animatronics and humans interacting on a live show. This new type of entertainment is fantastic and very interesting. And the key to all of this is that this magnificent show is Jared. He programs the animatronics and lights, writes, sings, and also does the voices of the animatronics. And it's no small feat. A short 3-minute sketch can take a week to be created. Today, Jared's goal is to continue working on this type of entertainment, and to reach more and more animatronic fans so they can enjoy his content. If you're an animatronic fan, and even if you're not, go check out Jared and the King's channel. Their content is amazing and so entertaining, and it is such a great way to honor one of the best characters from the original Chuck E. Cheese. Rock-afire Explosion Animatronics, Connor Leschinsky. We mentioned before how in the early 80s, Chuck E. Cheese was having problems, and one of the main reasons for these problems was the arrival of Showbiz Pizza as their main competitor. When Nolan Bushnell became interested in expanding Chuck E. Cheese, he found Robert L. Brock, who was supposed to be his principal investor. But due to different factors, Brock ended up investing in a new project called Showbiz. He developed this new project with the help of Aaron Fechter's creating engineering company. And for this first new project, the team created the iconic Rock-afire explosion animatronic band. This new band had full-bodied animatronics that had very fluid movements and several facial expressions. Time passed, and the relationship between Showbiz and creative engineering began to deteriorate since creative engineering had the rights to the image and recordings of the animatronics, and Showbiz wanted them to give them up without any compensation. Showbiz took all kinds of control from creative engineering and forced them out of the company. By the time this happened, Showbiz owned Chuck E. Cheese already, and they decided that they would change all of their locations to Chuck E. Cheese as part of the company's rebranding. And the Rock-afire Explosion Band was replaced by a new show called Chuck E. Cheese and Munch's Make-Believe Band. So creative engineering started selling their show to other restaurants like Circus Pizza, Pistol Pete's Pizza, and Billy Bob's Wonderland. But these places were closed little by little, leaving very few of the Rock-afire Explosion bands in operation. This meant that many of the band's sets were abandoned and left in terrible conditions. But fortunately, this was not the end of Rock-afire Explosion. Many of these bands were saved from complete abandonment by fans, and such is the case of Connor Leschinsky. Connor is passionate about animatronics and spends his time rescuing and restoring them. Since Connor was a kid, he would take apart toys when they stopped working to see how they worked. This led Connor to become a mechanical engineer, and he has applied all this knowledge into restoring these abandoned animatronics. Connor began back in 2015 when he purchased Rolf and Earl from the Rock-afire Explosion off Craigslist. Luckily, they came with all the required components needed to function, and were just missing the overall cosmetics to cover its mechanical structure. That's when Connor decided to start posting videos on his YouTube channel. The test for these animatronics was the first video he posted. After these animatronics, Connor purchased a Billy Bob and Looney Bird, but later sold these to buy the Okefenokee Bear Review Band mini-set, which contained Billy Bob, Fats, Mitzi, and Looney. He also got 2 variations of Beach Bear, Duke, and Looney Bird, which were part of the new Rock-afire Explosion. In total, he currently owns 10 complete characters. 8 of them are from the classic Rock-afire Explosion, and 2 of them are from the new Rock-afire Explosion. Connor uses the original setup for the animatronics. He was able to purchase several pieces of the original show controller, known as the Gray Box, through collaborating with other collectors. Show tapes for these animatronics were recorded onto reel-to-reel tapes, which were acquired from various sources, such as other collectors or eBay. The only problem is that show tapes have begun to degrade to the point where they affect the quality of the audio, cause they're about 30 years old. So soon, he will have to switch to digital by using a surround sound setup. It usually takes him about 3 months to restore the animatronics, depending on the available parts and his work schedule. But the longest time he's taken to find a part was 3 years for an Earl puppet cosmetic for Rolf de Wolf. To restore the animatronic, all the components have to be disassembled to clean the pieces and later see which ones are in good condition, and see which ones need to be repaired or bought. After this, the cosmetics have to be fixed and cleaned. The latex masks he gets directly from creative engineering, and Jack from SPT Productions helps with the painting of the details for the masks also. While all of this sounds very fun and cool, Connor thinks that the most challenging and fun part is finding the animatronics, keeping an eye out, constantly scanning through the internet, and asking around knowing if anyone may have an animatronic for sale, or when a store is going to throw them out. Currently, Connor is in the process of restoring his 11th character, who will become Chuck E. Cheese by salvaging random, assorted parts from people and businesses that no longer need them. His work is very impressive, and it is incredible to see the before and after of all the animatronics that he has restored. Connor's passion for robotics and animatronics continues to grow, and it won't be going away anywhere soon, because, as he says, there's always something out there that needs rescuing to be restored. And so, he will continue rescuing and restoring animatronics, and sharing his passion with all animatronic lovers through his YouTube channel. So again, animatronic fans everywhere, go check out his fantastic work. There's a link in the description so you can check out his fantastic channel. Tex Critters Pizza Jamboree and Play Circus Band, CavitySam. The 80s gave us many incredible animatronic bands, and one of these was Tex Critters Pizza Jamboree Band. This band was created by legendary Disney Imagineer Larry Nicolai and Rolly Crump for a new entertainment center focused on families that had arcades, TV showing the most popular channels of the time like MTV, small theaters that showed 3D movies, and of course, the fantastic Tex Critters Pizza Jamboree Band. The band's members were Skeeter, Cal, Tex, and Roxy. Each animatronic weighed about 300 pounds and was 8 feet tall. The entertainment center opened in 20 different locations, but sadly, 1984 was a terrible year for Castle Entertainment due to the high cost of managing branches. This led to the company to close most of its complexes. Tex and the company were sold to Magic Landing and relocated to the park's pizza parlor, where they continued playing until the park's closing in 1988. The park was abandoned from its closing until 2009, leaving Tex and company in a terrible state, becoming worse and worse with every passing day. It's unfortunate to see something that was created to entertain and give joy to end up in such a terrible state. The park was demolished in 2013, but thankfully, animatronic fans managed to rescue and rebuild many of the animatronics of the different branches and give them a second life. One of these fans is Andrea, better known in the community as CavitySam. Andrea has had a lifelong passion for all things vintage and unique, and so she has spent most of her life collecting. She became an animatronic fan thanks to the 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the King Kong animatronic that used to be on the Universal Studios Hollywood studio tour. Ever since she saw them, Andrea was fascinated by how they looked and moved and wanted to know how they were built. Today, Andrea owns 17 animatronics, including a simple tube movement animatronic of the Warblets from Pizza Time Theater, which gave Andrea a basic understanding of how everything came together in an animatronic. Barney Bear and Ellie Elephant from the Circus Playhouse Band, which she was able to get after a friend found them posted on Facebook Marketplace. And of course, the animatronics from the famous Tex Critters Pizza Jamboree. When the previous owner abandoned the show, 2 effects artists acquired them and then tried to sell them with no luck. So they decided to list them on eBay, where Andrea found them and won them for a very low price. She got these animatronics back in 2016 and has been slowly working on them over the years, but she didn't have the proper resources to restore them until mid-2020. From then until now, she's gotten the Tex Critters show about 80% restored and the Circus Playhouse show about 40% restored. To restore them, they begin by doing a movement test, which is connecting the character to an air compressor and manually pressing the buttons on the valve bank. Then they do a teardown and deep cleaning of the animatronic frame. While the shells are removed, they repair any broken fiberglass by laying new fiberglass cloth and resin over it. They also replace any non-functional cylinders and valves. Also, any parts that are scratched and chipped are stripped, sanded, and repainted, and any parts that are needed are made from scratch by Andrea. Before they reassemble everything, another movement test is done. If everything is good, it's time to reassemble the character and do finishing work that's needed. Nowadays, Andrea and her boyfriend Bobby are in the process of securing the rights to the characters for Circus Playhouse and Tex Critters, which will allow them to produce new show tapes for them and bring them back to the public eye. There are absolutely no plans to put them in a restaurant or public place, but fans will still be able to see them in person and on YouTube. They have contacted someone involved with the creation of the show tapes for Circus Playhouse, and he turned out to still have the master tapes for the show. He offered the tapes to them, along with the rights for $2,000. So Andrea is hosting a fundraiser to help raise the money so that these tapes can be acquired, digitized, and released to the public. Meanwhile, Andrea will continue restoration work until the shows are functional and then try to find a place where they can be set up on stages, fully functional. If she can obtain the character rights, she will be producing new content for them, such as new show tapes, merchandise, and other fun stuff. The goal is to keep these characters from fading into obscurity and reliving childhood memories for so many people, and keep them alive for future generations. You need to check out CavitySam's channel to see her amazing work in animatronics. We'll leave a link in the description. All of these amazing creators and restorers are a perfect example of the passion that runs in this great animatronics community. So please, go check out their channels and support them so you can learn more about what they do. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more animatronics and theme park stories.